The metallic sound of the private elevator announced the arrival of Archer Kingston to the 45th floor of the Pinnacle, one of the most exclusive skyscrapers in Manhattan. His footsteps echoed down the hallway as he loosened his Italian tie, feeling the weight of the last 72 hours of negotiations in Singapore. At 38, the CEO of Kingston Technologies had built a technology empire, but in the past 6 months since Vivienne's death, his luxurious penthouse had been transformed into a mausoleum of memories. The clock showed 22:47 when the biometric lock recognized your fingerprint. Archer pushed open the heavy door and immediately noticed something was different. A female figure sat on her Italian leather sofa, her hands fidgeting with the hem of a coat that had seen better days. "Who are you? How did you get here?" Archer's voice was controlled, but his hands were already searching for the phone in his jacket pocket. The young woman stood up quickly, revealing a delicate face framed by wavy brown hair. "My name is Willow Palmer, and your housekeeper let me in. I have something important to tell you." Archer noticed the tremor in her voice, the way she bit her lower lip, clearly nervous. The housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, was extremely trustworthy. If she allowed this stranger in, there must have been a reason. "Hi, sir. Your wife hired me as a surrogate before she died." The words came out in a rush, as if Willow feared she would lose her nerve if she hesitated. The world seemed to stop. Archer felt the ground disappear beneath his feet as memories of Vivienne flooded his mind. His wife, brilliant and determined, had always dreamed of having children. Infertility had been a cruel blow to both of them, but she had never, ever mentioned anything about surrogacy. "That's impossible," he replied, his voice icy. "My wife died 6 months ago. If this is some kind of scam—" "Please," Willow interrupted, her hands shaking as she reached for her worn purse. "She asked me to give this to you." A cream envelope, sealed with the monogram Vivienne always wore, was extended toward her. Archer took it, feeling the familiar textured paper between his fingers. Inside, he found legal documents from New York's most respected fertility clinic, signed contracts, and a letter addressed to him in his wife's distinctive handwriting. "My love," the letter began, and Archer had to sit down while he read it. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't be there to see our dream come true. The cancer I discovered 8 months ago is in the terminal stage, but I can't leave without trying to give you what we always wanted." The letter fell from his shaking hands. Cancer. His wife had hidden not only her illness, but also her last attempt to make their dream come true. Archer looked at Willow, truly seeing her for the first time. She looked no older than 25, and despite her simple clothing, there was a dignity in her bearing that intrigued him. "How long?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 3 months pregnant," Willow replied softly. "Vivienne chose one of the eggs you had frozen. The baby is genetically yours." The silence that followed was deafening. Archer stood up, walking to the window that took up the entire wall. New York sparkled below, oblivious to the emotional earthquake that had just occurred in that penthouse. "Why did you accept?" he asked, still facing away. Willow hesitated before answering. "I need to be honest. Money was a big factor. I'm a music teacher at a public school in the Bronx, and my little sister needs expensive surgery. But when I met Vivienne—" her voice trailed off. "She had something special. Incredible strength, even though she knew she was sick. She made me promise to take care of this baby until you were ready to accept him." Archer turned around, his blue eyes studying Willow intently. "What if I'm not ready?" "Then I will respect your decision," she replied with surprising calm. "But Vivienne believed you would be an incredible father. She said her greatest pain was not dying, but leaving you alone." The words hit Archer like a punch. Memories of Vivienne's last days when she seemed distant and worried now made terrible sense. His wife had faced not only death, but also the responsibility of ensuring that her legacy of love continued. "I need time," he said finally. "This is a lot to process." Willow nodded, grabbing her bag. "Of course. I left my contact with your housekeeper and—" She hesitated at the door. "Vivienne asked me to tell you one last thing. Don't let the fear of love stop you from living, my love. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected circumstances." When the door closed behind Willow, Archer remained motionless, Vivienne's letter still spread out on the coffee table. Outside, the city continued its frenetic pace, but inside that cover, time had stopped. Somewhere in the Bronx, a young music teacher carried his wife's last gift, a gift that could be her salvation or her undoing. The Kingston Technologies office occupied 3 entire floors of the Manhattan corporate building, but that morning, Archer barely noticed the empire he had built around him. Sitting in his executive chair, he absently twirled Vivienne's envelope between his fingers, rereading for the 10th time the documents that turned his life upside down. "Marcus, cancel my appointments this morning," he instructed his assistant over the intercom, "and look up everything you can on Willow Palmer." On the documents in front of him, Vivienne's signature danced like a ghost. The fertility clinic was legitimate, one of the most prestigious in the country. The contracts were immaculate, every detail meticulously planned. Typical of Vivienne, always a perfectionist, even in the face of death. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Caroline Bennett, Vivienne's best friend and the firm's lawyer, entered with a serious expression on her face. "So it's true," she said, closing the door behind her. "I got your message. Vivienne really did it." Archer looked up, a sudden suspicion growing in his chest. "Did you know?" Caroline hesitated, guilt written across her features. "She made me promise not to tell. She said you already had too much weight on your shoulders with the company's expansion in Asia." "Damn it, Caroline!" Archer stood up abruptly, his hands balled into fists. "She was dying. I had a right to know." "Yes, you did," Caroline replied softly. "But you knew Vivienne. She always wanted to protect everyone around her. When she discovered the cancer, why didn't you tell me later? After she—" Archer couldn't finish the sentence. "Because she made me swear to wait until Willow came to you. Vivienne wanted you to have time to process your loss before dealing with it." Archer slumped back into his chair, running his hands over his face. How could she hide something like that? How could she choose to die alone? Caroline approached, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "She wasn't alone, Archer. In the last few weeks, when you were traveling, I accompanied her to her chemotherapy sessions. She fought until the end, but I wanted her last memories with you to be of happy times, not of hospitals and pain." The silence weighed heavily between them, filled with painful revelations. Through the panoramic windows, New York continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the office. "What about this Willow Palmer?" Archer asked finally. "What do you know about her?" "Vivienne personally chose her from dozens of candidates. She's a music teacher, works with underprivileged children in the Bronx. No addictions, no criminal record, above-average IQ. But what impressed Vivienne most was her compassion." Marcus entered the office with a folder, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, here is the report on Willow Palmer. Current address, employment history, financial status." Archer quickly flipped through the documents. Willow lived in a modest apartment in the Bronx with her younger sister, Rachel, who suffered from a congenital heart condition. His bills were always up to date, despite his modest salary. Exemplary grades at college, where he graduated with honors in music education. "Do you intend to get to know her better?" Caroline asked, watching him closely. "She's carrying my son," Archer replied, the reality of those words still sounding surreal. "I need to make sure everything is okay, that she is being monitored properly." "Vivienne got everything ready," Caroline explained, pulling more documents from her briefcase. "Separate bank account for medical expenses, furnished apartment near here for the last months of pregnancy, the best doctors in the city." "Typical of her," Archer murmured, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Think about everything. Control every detail." "Archer," Caroline hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I know this comes as a huge shock, but knowing Vivienne as we did, She would never do something like this without being absolutely sure it was the right decision. He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Willow's photo in the report. There was something in her expression, a mix of strength and vulnerability, that reminded her of Vivian. I need to see her again, he decided, picking up the phone. There are questions that need to be answered. As he dialed Willow's number, Archer felt the weight of the last 24 hours on his shoulders. His life, which had already been turned upside down by Vivian's death, now faced another dramatic twist. Somewhere in the city, a young teacher carried not only her son, but also his late wife's last act of love. The phone rang 3 times before Willow's soft voice answered. Hello? Miss Palmer, Archer said, his professional voice masking the storm of emotions inside him. We need to talk. How about lunch today? The Le Bernardin restaurant, with its 3 Michelin stars, was a haven of elegance in the heart of Manhattan. Willow felt out of place as soon as she walked through the glass doors, aware that her more formal dress still seemed too casual for the refined surroundings. The maitre d' led her to a discreet table in the back, where Archer Kingston was already waiting for her, looking impeccable in his tailored suit. Miss Palmer, he stood up politely, pulling out the chair for her. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please call me Willow, she replied, trying to mask her nervousness. And I appreciate the invitation, although... She hesitated, looking around. Perhaps coffee would be more appropriate. A faint smile curved Archer's lips. Vivian always said that important conversations deserve good food. It was one of her rules. The mention of Vivian brought a charged silence to the table. A sommelier approached, offering wine, but Willow politely declined, asking only for water and lemon. Archer noted the conscious gesture, yet another reminder of the responsibility she carried. I spent the night reviewing the documents, he began, after they made their requests, and talking to Caroline Bennett. Apparently everyone around me was keeping secrets from Vivian. I didn't mean to, Willow defended softly. His wife. She was a force of nature. When she came to me at the school where I teach, I thought it was about music classes. She had heard about our program for underprivileged children. How did she find out about you? It was a coincidence, actually. One of my students' mothers works at the fertility clinic. When I mentioned about my sister Rachel's condition, Willow trailed off, biting her lip. Continue, Archer encouraged, genuinely interested. Rachel was born with a congenital heart defect. She needs complex surgery, but our insurance doesn't cover it. I was teaching extra classes, performing at weddings, anything to raise the money. She took a deep breath. When Vivian found out, she said it was destiny. She believed that good people attract good things. The waiter arrived with the dishes, momentarily interrupting the conversation. Archer watched Willow discreetly as she tasted the food, noticing how her eyes widened slightly at the taste. Delicious, she murmured, and for a moment his guard dropped, revealing a genuine smile that lit up his face. Willow. Archer leaned in slightly. I need to know. Why did you agree? Besides the money? She set down her fork, considering the question. I only knew your wife for 2 months before the accident, but she had this way of making you believe in miracles. When she told me about her illness, about how she wanted to leave something good in the world, Willow swallowed. She showed me photos of the 2 of you, told me about her dreams of having a family. As a teacher, I see every day the power of love transforming lives. I couldn't say no. Archer felt a lump in his throat. Did she suffer a lot? She was brave, Willow replied gently. In the last few weeks, when the pain was most intense, I still found the strength to smile and make plans. She wrote several letters. To the baby. To you. She asked me to keep them. Are there any more letters? Archer felt his heart speed up. For each month of the pregnancy, and then for the baby's first years. She wanted the child to know how much she was loved, even before she existed. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft clink of cutlery and distant conversations. Archer studied the young woman in front of him, so different from his world of business and power. There was an authenticity about her that was refreshing. "How are you feeling?" "About the pregnancy?" he asked finally. "Good. The morning sickness is over. I have an appointment with Dr. Richardson next week for the morphology ultrasound." "I'd like to go." The words came out before he could think. "If you don't mind." Willow looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course. Vivian." She was hoping you'd want to participate. About the apartment she prepared. "It's not necessary," Willow interrupted quickly. "My apartment is small, but—" "Yes, it is necessary," Archer was firm. "Not only for the comfort, but for the proximity to the doctors and the hospital. Besides," he hesitated, "I would like to be more present during the pregnancy." The look Willow gave him was penetrating, as if she was trying to read his true intentions. "Mr. Kingston—" "Archer," he corrected. "Archer," she continued, "I don't want you to feel obligated. I know this is all a shock, and I'll understand if you need time or even if you decide not to." "It's my son," he interrupted her, his voice low but intense. "Vivian's last gift. I won't waste it." A lone tear ran down Willow's face, and she quickly wiped it away. "Sorry, hormones," she tried to smile. "Vivian said you would react like that. She knew you so well." "Not so much," Archer replied with a hint of bitterness. "She didn't trust me to share her illness." It wasn't a lack of trust. Willow lightly touched his hand on the table, an instinctive gesture of comfort that surprised them both. It was love. She didn't want their last memories together to be tainted by the shadow of death. Archer looked at the small hand on top of his, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. Quickly, Willow withdrew her hand, blushing slightly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "It's okay," he interrupted her softly. "I think we're going to need to get used to each other over the next few months." The rest of the lunch passed with lighter conversation, as they ironed out practical details about doctor appointments and moving into their new apartment. As they said goodbye on the sidewalk, Archer was surprised by her reluctance to see her go. "Willow," he called as she was heading to the taxi. "Thank you, not just for today, but for everything." She smiled, that luminous smile that transformed her face. "See you next week, Archer." Watching the taxi drive away, Archer felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Somewhere, he was sure, Vivian was smiling. The apartment Vivian had prepared for Willow was on the Upper East Side, just 10 blocks from Archer's penthouse. It was an elegant yet welcoming duplex, decorated in soft tones that perfectly reflected his late wife's refined taste. As he oversaw Willow's move, Archer couldn't help but notice how the young teacher's few belongings seemed shy of the opulence of the place. "Will your sister be okay alone?" he asked, watching Willow arrange musical scores on a bookshelf. "Rachel is with our aunt in New Jersey for the week," she replied, stopping to rest in an armchair. "It's closer to the hospital where cardiac monitoring is carried out." Afternoon light filtered through the wide windows, creating dancing shadows on Willow's face. Archer realized that since lunch 3 days ago, he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her, not romantically, he told himself, but with a growing curiosity about the woman his wife had chosen to carry their child. "I found this among Vivian's things," he said, taking out a photo album from his briefcase. "I thought you might like to see." Willow's eyes lit up as he sat down next to her on the couch. The pages revealed moments from Vivian's life, her graduation from Yale, her marriage to Archer, travels around the world. In each photo, her radiant smile seemed to defy time. "She was so beautiful," Willow murmured, gently touching a photograph of Vivian, smiling in a rose garden. "He showed me this photo once. He said it was taken the day you guys decided to try for a baby." Archer felt his throat tighten. "The Brooklyn Botanical Garden. It was our favorite place in the spring." "She talked about you a lot," Willow continued, carefully turning the pages. "About how you met in college, how you supported her when she decided to open her own art gallery." "The Kingston Gallery," Archer added, a sad smile playing on his lips. "It's still there in Soho. I didn't have the courage to close it after it." "You should visit her," Willow suggested gently. "Vivian said it was her sacred place. where art and love met. A comfortable silence settled between them as they continued flipping through the album. Suddenly, Willow reached for her stomach, her eyes widening. "What it was?" Archer asked, alarmed. "The baby," she smiled, taking his hand without thinking. "Here, sit down." Before he could protest, Archer felt a slight movement beneath his fingers, like the flutter of a butterfly's wings. The reality of his son, his and Vivian's, hit him full force. "It's amazing," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It started a few days ago," Willow explained, still holding his hand. "It's usually most active in the late afternoon." The intimate moment was interrupted by Archer's cell phone ringing. Reluctantly, he withdrew his hand, answering the call. "Kingston, yes, Caroline. No, I didn't forget about the board meeting tomorrow." Willow took the opportunity to get up, going to the kitchen to prepare tea. When he returned with 2 steaming cups, he found Archer gazing out the window at the city. "Sorry about that," she said, offering him a cup. "I know it must be weird for you." "No need to apologize," he replied, accepting the tea. "He's my son, too. I want to be there." "What's it going to be like?" she asked after a moment. "After the baby is born?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. It was something Archer had been avoiding thinking about, but it needed to be discussed. "Vivian left clear instructions in her will," he began. "The child will remain in my custody, but you will have visitation rights if you wish. There is also a substantial trust fund to secure your future and that of your sister." Willow nodded slowly. "It's not the money I want to keep in touch with," she said softly. "During these months, I've already become attached to this baby, not as a mother, but as someone who promised Vivian to take care of him." "I know it's not about the money," Archer replied, surprising them both with the sincerity in his voice. "Vivian wouldn't have chosen you if she was." The sun was beginning to set, painting the New York sky in shades of pink and gold. In the silence that followed, they both realized that they were united by something bigger than themselves. Not just the baby, but the memory of a woman who, even in death, continued to weave the threads of their lives. "I have a presentation with my students next weekend," Willow mentioned, changing the subject. "A benefit recital to raise funds for musical instruments." "Where will it be?" "At St. John's Church in the Bronx. It's not much." "I'd like to go," Archer interrupted, "if you don't mind." The smile that lit up Willow's face made something twitch inside him, something that had long been dormant. "Of course," she replied. "The kids would be thrilled. Some of them have never had the chance to play an instrument before our program." When Archer finally left the apartment that night, he carried with him more than memories of Vivian. He carried the certainty that his wife, in her last act of love, had not only given him a son, but also a chance to rediscover the meaning of family. The benefit recital at St. John's Church was packed, despite the light rain falling over the Bronx that Saturday night. Archer, sitting in the third row, watched Willow lead a group of children in a rousing rendition of Over the Rainbow. Her fingers danced over the worn piano as she guided her little musicians with a mixture of gentleness and authority that fascinated him. Among the children, a girl of approximately 8 years old stood out on the violin, her eyes closed as she played with a passion that transcended her age. When the song ended, applause echoed off the church's centuries-old walls, and Archer saw Willow's face light up with pride. "That's Sophia," Willow explained later, during the small reception in the parish hall. 6 months ago, she barely spoke. Her parents were deported, and she lives with her grandmother. The music brought her back. Archer watched as the girl hugged Willow tightly, whispering something in her ear that made the teacher smile and kiss the top of her head. "You're good at this," he commented when Sophia walked away, "in making people feel safe." "That's what music does," Willow replied, unconsciously stroking her nearly 4-month-old belly. "It creates a space where we can be vulnerable, without fear." The comment hit Archer in an unexpected way. Since Vivian's death, He had closed himself in a fortress of work and obligations, avoiding any situation that might expose his own vulnerabilities. "Mr. Kingston!" An elderly woman approached, her wrinkled hands holding a plate of homemade cookies. "I'm Sister Mary Catherine. I didn't imagine we'd have a Fortune 500 CEO at our humble recital." "Please call me Archer," he replied, accepting a cookie. "Willow told me about the music program. It's amazing what you guys can do with limited resources." "Oh, it's all her credit," the nun smiled, giving Willow a fond look. "Since you arrived, you've transformed this place. You know, Mr. Archer, sometimes God works in mysterious ways. People come into our lives just when we need them." Something in the way Sister Mary Catherine looked between him and Willow suggested that she knew more than she let on. Before they could respond, they were interrupted by the sharp sound of an out-of-tune violin. "I'm sorry," Willow smiled. "Duty calls." Archer watched her walk over to a boy who was struggling with his instrument, his patience evident as he adjusted the position of his fingers on the strings. It was difficult to reconcile this Willow, confident, nurturing, with the nervous young woman who had shown up on her doorstep weeks ago. "She reminds me of your Vivian," Sister Mary Catherine commented softly. "That same sparkle in his eyes when he talks about music, that same ability to see the best in people." The mention of Vivian didn't hurt as much as it used to. "Have you met my wife? She came a few times over the last few months. She would sit there," the nun pointed to a bench near the altar, "listening to Willow rehearse with the children. She said the music helped her find peace." A new wave of emotion went through Archer. How many aspects of Vivian's life had he missed, too busy with conferences and financial reports? The rest of the night passed in a blur of music, conversations, and children's laughter. When the last guest left, Archer insisted on helping Willow organize the room. "No need," she protested, but he was already stacking chairs. "Consider my contribution to the program," he replied, removing his jacket and rolling up the sleeves of his designer shirt. They worked in comfortable silence, interrupted only by the distant sound of rain. Occasionally, their hands brushed against each other as they moved furniture, causing small electric shocks that they both pretended not to notice. "Thank you for coming," Willow said finally, sitting down at the piano. "It meant a lot to the kids to have someone important here." "It was an enlightening night," Archer replied, sitting next to her on the piano bench. "Vivian used to say that true wealth is in people, not in bank accounts. I think I only now really understand what she meant." Willow played a few soft notes, a melody he didn't recognize. "She gave me this," she said, taking an envelope out of her pocket, "to give to you after the recital. Told you you'd understand the timing." With slightly shaking hands, Archer opened the envelope, instantly recognizing his wife's handwriting. "My love, if you're reading this, it means you finally met Willow's true heart. Not just the surrogate I chose, but the extraordinary woman she is. I know you're scared to open up again, to let people into your life. But remember, our son deserves to meet not only the successful businessman, but also the man who made me believe in modern fairy tales. Allow yourself to feel, Archer. Allow yourself to live. With all my love, Vivian." When he looked at Willow, there were unshed tears in his eyes. Speechless, she began to play again, this time the song she had played at her wedding to Vivian. "Like you." "She taught me," Willow replied softly, her fingers dancing over the keys. "She said it was the song that made you fall in love with her." At that moment, sitting on a piano bench in a Bronx church, Archer Kingston felt something inside him begin to melt. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't try to fight it. The morphological ultrasound was scheduled for a rainy Tuesday in Manhattan. Archer found Willow at the clinic's reception desk, her cheeks flushed from the cold and her hair slightly damp. She held a folder of sheet music against her chest, evidently coming straight from school. "Excuse my appearance," she muttered, straightening her coat. "Afternoon music teacher replacement cancelled at the last minute." "You shouldn't be overworking yourself," Archer replied, his voice betraying a concern that surprised him. Since the recital, Something had changed between them, a wary familiarity born of shared nights of music and memories. Dr. Richardson greeted them with a warm smile. She was a woman in her 50s, with gentle eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Ah, so I finally met Dad," she said, extending her hand to Archer. "Vivian talked about you a lot." Another person who had met his wife in her final months. Archer swallowed the familiar lump in his throat as Willow settled onto the gurney. The doctor applied the gel and began the exam, her experienced eyes studying the screen with professional attention. "Do you want to know the sex?" she asked, moving the transducer. Archer and Willow exchanged a look. They hadn't discussed it. "Vivian left an envelope," Willow said softly, "for this specific moment. It's home." "She thought of everything, didn't she?" Archer commented, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Well, I can tell you the baby is perfectly healthy," Dr. Richardson continued. "Normal development, strong heartbeat." The sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, a fast, steady rhythm that made something inside Archer twitch. Without realizing it, he had approached the gurney, his hand finding Willow's. "It's like music," she whispered, her fingers instinctively intertwining with his. For a moment they stood like that, connected by the sound of the life they created together, not by choice, but by one last act of love from Vivian. When the doctor finished the examination, Archer noticed that she was still holding Willow's hand and quickly let go, an imperceptible blush staining her face. "I'll prescribe some additional supplements," Dr. Richardson said, diplomatically ignoring the intimate moment he witnessed. "And Willow, you need to rest more. Your work is important, but so is this baby." Outside the clinic, the rain had turned to a light drizzle. Archer insisted on taking Willow home in his car, not trusting the crowded subway at that time. "We can open Vivian's envelope together," she suggested as they went up to her apartment. "If you want." The envelope was kept in an old music box, another gift from Vivian. Willow opened it, letting a soft melody fill the room as they sat on the couch. "Dear Archer and Willow," the letter began, "if you're reading this together, it means my plan is working better than I expected. The baby you're carrying is a girl. I chose not to tell you sooner because I wanted you to find out together, as a family, even if not in the conventional way I initially imagined." Archer felt tears burn his eyes. A girl, a small part of Vivian to carry on her legacy. "A girl," Willow repeated softly, her own voice cracking. "Vivian once told me that she dreamed of a daughter who could play the piano like her." "The grand piano is still on the roof," Archer commented, lost in memories. "I couldn't get rid of it afterwards." "You should play again," Willow suggested gently. "Music has healing power." "I haven't played since Vivian taught me a few basic notes," he admitted. "I never had much talent." "I can teach you." The words came out before Willow could stop them. "I mean, if you want. It might be good for the baby to hear music from an early age." Archer studied her for a moment, noticing how she bit her lower lip when she was nervous, a habit he had begun to find strangely endearing. "You already do so much," he replied. "I don't want to burden you any further." "It wouldn't be overload," she smiled. "It would be therapeutic, for both of us." The "we" hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken meanings. Since the recital, they had begun to develop a comfortable routine, occasional dinners to discuss baby preparations, messages exchanged about doctor appointments, small moments shared that began to fill the empty spaces left by Vivian's absence. "Okay," he agreed finally, "but on one condition. You need to promise to get more rest. Dr. Richardson is right." "Deal." Willow held out her hand in a playful gesture. "But you have to promise to take classes seriously." When their fingers touched again, they both pretended not to notice the electric current that seemed to flow between them. It was easier that way. Safer. After all, they were united only by the baby and the memory of Vivian. Any other feeling would be too complicated. "Tomorrow?" she asked, letting go of his hand. "Tomorrow," he confirmed, getting up to leave. At the door, Archer stopped, turning to Willow one last time. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For making it feel right, natural, even when it shouldn't be." The smile she gave him was etched in his mind the entire ride home, and if, that night, he dreamed of delicate fingers teaching him how to play the piano, well, that would be just another secret to keep in his already full-of-them heart. The first piano lesson took place on a Thursday night. The sun was setting over Manhattan when Willow arrived at Archer's penthouse, finding him already in more casual attire. A rare sight from the always impeccable CEO. The Steinway grand piano occupied a prominent place in the room, its ivory keys reflecting the last golden rays of the day. "It's still in tune," Archer commented, as Willow gently slid her fingers across the keys. "I have it tuned regularly, even if no one touches it." "It's a magnificent instrument," she replied, sitting down on the bench. "Vivian had excellent taste." "As with everything," he murmured, joining her on the bench. The space was tight, forcing them to stand close together, their arms lightly touching. "Let's start with something simple," Willow said, placing Archer's hands on the keys. "Posture is important. Keep your wrists relaxed, fingers curled." Your touch was gentle but firm as you adjusted his position. Archer noticed that his hands, although small, had calluses on the fingertips, marks of years dedicated to music. The soft scent of her shampoo, something floral and delicate, distracted him more than he wanted to admit. "This is the C major scale," she explained, guiding his fingers across the keys. "That's where everyone starts." Archer's first attempts were clumsy, eliciting suppressed laughter from Willow. "You play like an executive," she joked. "Very strict, very controlled." "That's how I've survived all these years in the corporate world," he replied, a reluctant smile appearing on his lips. "But music isn't about survival," Willow argued, placing her hands over his again. "It's about allowing yourself to feel." The baby chose this moment to speak up, making Willow let out a small exclamation of surprise. Instinctively, Archer placed his hand on her belly, feeling his daughter's now familiar movements. "I think she approves of the lessons," Willow smiled, covering his hand with her own. For a moment, they stayed like that, connected not just by the baby, but by something deeper and scarier that neither of them dared to name. It was Archer who broke the moment, withdrawing his hand as if he had been burned. "Maybe we should continue another day," he suggested, standing up abruptly. "Archer," Willow called softly, "we can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Pretending that there isn't tension between us, that we don't feel this connection." The silence that followed was deafening. Archer walked to the window, his stiff back betraying his inner turmoil. "I can't," he finally said. "It wouldn't be fair to Vivian's memory." "Do you think she would want you to close yourself off forever?" Willow asked, joining him at the window. "The woman I met was full of life, of love. She wanted you to be happy." "How can I be happy when she died keeping secrets from me?" he snapped, turning to face her. "How can I trust my feelings when this is all so complicated?" "Life is complicated," Willow replied, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened to fall. "But that doesn't mean we should stop living it." The baby kicked again, as if agreeing. Willow placed her hand on her stomach, a gesture that had become automatic in the last few weeks. "She would be the first to tell you that you're being stubborn," she continued, a small smile playing on her lips. "Vivienne told me about how you two met, how you held out for months before admitting you were in love with her." Archer let out a surprised laugh. "Did she tell you that?" "It told you a lot of things, about how dedicated, loyal, passionate you were under that professional facade, about how you were afraid of giving yourself completely to someone after losing your parents at such a young age." "She had no right." "She had every right," Willow interrupted him gently, "because she loved you and wanted you to find happiness even after she was gone." Archer studied her for a long moment, noting how the twilight light softened her features, how her eyes shone with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "And you?" he asked finally. "What do you want, Willow?" I want to honor the promise I made to Vivian, to care not just for this baby, but for you as well. And maybe—" she hesitated, "maybe find out if what I'm feeling is real or just an echo of the circumstances that brought us together." Before Archer could respond, his phone rang, an office emergency requiring his immediate attention. "Go," Willow said, grabbing her bag. "We continued the piano lesson another day." At the door she stopped, turning around one last time. "You know what Vivian told me about music? That sometimes we need to leave a note hanging in the air, unfinished, so that the next melody can begin." When she left, Archer stood for a long time looking at the piano, the keys still warm from her touch. Somewhere, he could swear he heard Vivian laughing, that musical laugh she always had when she knew something others had yet to discover for themselves. The next 2 weeks passed at an odd pace for Archer and Willow. The piano lessons continued, but there was a new tension in the air, a silent recognition of the feelings growing between them, even as they both tried to ignore them. On a particularly busy afternoon, Caroline Bennett appeared unannounced on the roof during one of her classes. He found Archer and Willow sitting side by side on the piano bench, their shoulders touching as she tried to teach him a simplified version of Moonlight Sonata. "I didn't know you had company," Caroline commented, her discerning gaze assessing the scene before her. "Caroline," Archer stood up quickly, as if he had been caught doing something wrong. "I didn't expect you today." "Clearly," she replied, an enigmatic smile playing on her lips. "Actually, I came to bring some documents I found in Vivian's office at the gallery. I thought you two should see them." Willow started to get up, but Caroline gestured for her to stay seated. "Please stay. This concerns you too." The documents Caroline brought were a series of letters and personal notes from Vivian, dating back to the months before her death. Among them was a specific diary dedicated to her search for a surrogate mother. "She interviewed dozens of candidates," Caroline explained, sitting on the couch while Archer and Willow flipped through the pages. "But when you met Willow—" "Today I met the person who will carry our baby," Archer read aloud, his voice shaking slightly. "There's something about her that reminds me of myself when I was younger, that mix of strength and vulnerability, that passion for music that transcends life's difficulties." Willow felt tears burning her eyes as she continued reading. "More than that, I saw in her someone who could understand Archer after I was gone, someone who wouldn't be afraid of his intensity, his carefully constructed walls." "She planned everything," Caroline said softly. "Not just the pregnancy, but the aftermath as well." "What do you mean?" Archer asked, although his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Vivian knew you would close in after her death, Archer. She knew you better than anyone. She knew you would need someone who understood not only your pain, but also your passion, for life, for music, for love." "So this was all a plan?" Willow asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "She manipulated us?" "No," Caroline smiled gently. "She created an opportunity. What you do with it is your choice." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken possibilities. Archer walked to the window, his tense posture revealing the inner battle he was waging. "It's not fair to you, Willow," he said finally. "You deserve better than to be part of a plan devised by my late wife." "What if I don't care?" Willow responded, standing up to join him. "What if I'm grateful that she gave me not only the chance to help my sister, but also to get to know you?" Caroline discreetly gathered her things, recognizing that her presence was no longer necessary. At the door, he stopped for a moment. "Do you know what Vivian always said about destiny? That sometimes it needs a little help to bring together the right people." When they were alone, the sound of the city below seemed amplified in the silence of the penthouse. Willow felt the baby move and instinctively took Archer's hand, placing it on her belly. "She's agitated today," he murmured. "Like you," he observed, his fingers tracing small circles over the fabric of her blouse. "Archer," Willow began, gathering her courage, "we can't keep pretending that this is just about the baby. that what's happening between us is just gratitude or obligation. I know, he replied, his voice hoarse. But I'm afraid, Willow. Afraid of dishonoring her memory. Afraid of falling in love again and losing everything again. Vivian didn't want you to live in fear, she said softly, turning to face him. She wanted you to live fully, to love again. Their faces were close now, so close that Willow could feel his breath on her skin. The moment seemed suspended in time, filled with unspoken possibilities and fears. "And you?" Archer asked, his free hand coming up to touch her face. "What do you want, Willow?" "I want the truth," she replied, leaning into his touch, "even if it's scary, even if it complicates everything." The kiss, when it finally happened, was soft and tentative, a mutual acknowledgement of long-suppressed feelings. When they separated, they both had tears in their eyes. "This changes everything," Archer whispered. "I know," Willow replied, a shaky smile on her lips. "But maybe that's exactly what Vivian wanted." The baby kicked again, as if in agreement, making them laugh softly. Outside, Manhattan continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the moment of revelation that was taking place at the top of one of its skyscrapers. But inside that shelter, two hurting souls were beginning, hesitantly, to allow themselves the possibility of a new beginning. News of Archer Kingston and Willow Palmer's relationship spread quickly through the halls of Kingston Technologies. Curious glances and whispers followed Archer through the halls, but for the first time in his professional life, he found he didn't care about the speculation. One morning, while reviewing contracts in his office, Marcus hurriedly entered. "Mr. Kingston, Miss Palmer is here. It seems urgent." Archer got up immediately, finding Willow at the front desk. Her face was pale, and she was holding her cell phone tightly. "Rachel had a crisis," she quickly explained. "They're taking her to emergency surgery." Without hesitation, Archer grabbed his jacket. "I'm going with you," he declared, already guiding her to the private elevator. During the drive to New Jersey, Willow remained silent, her hand intertwined with Archer's as he drove. The baby, as if sensing the tension, was unusually quiet. At the hospital, they found Willow's aunt in the ICU hallway. "The doctors say her heart is very weak," the lady explained, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "The procedure is risky, but without it—" "As?" Archer asked abruptly. "What?" "How much does the surgery cost? The full treatment?" Willow touched his arm gently. "Archer, no. You've already done so much. Rachel is your family," he replied, turning to face her. "And you're important to me. Let me help." The next few hours were torture of waiting. Archer watched Willow pace the waiting room, her hands occasionally resting on her prominent belly, as if seeking comfort in her daughter's silent presence. "Vivian would do the same," he said softly, when he finally managed to convince her to sit down. "She always said that money only has value when used to help those we love." Willow rested her head on his shoulder, allowing herself for the first time since they arrived to show her vulnerability. "I'm so scared, Archer. Rachel is all I have left of my original family." "Not anymore," he replied, kissing her temple. "Now you have me, and our daughter." The surgery lasted 6 hours. When the surgeon finally showed up, his tired smile brought instant relief. "She's a fighter," he declared. "The procedure was a success." Willow collapsed into Archer's arms, sobbing with relief. He held her tight, murmuring words of comfort in her ear, while her aunt called other family members with the good news. Later, when Rachel was stable and sleeping in the ICU, Archer convinced Willow to go home and rest. On the way, they stopped at Vivian's art gallery in Soho, a place he hadn't visited since her death. The space still maintained its essence, the impeccable white walls, the strategically positioned lighting, the carefully selected works of art. In the back office, everything remained exactly as she had left it. "She'd love to see that," Willow commented softly, watching Archer run his fingers across Vivian's desk. To see you moving forward, but keeping your legacy alive. I found this here last week, he said, opening a drawer and taking out an envelope. Another letter from her. I think now is the right time to read it. Together, they sat on the leather sofa that occupied a corner of the office. The letter, like all the others, was written in Vivian's elegant handwriting. My dear Archer, if you're reading this letter, it means you've finally found the courage to return to the gallery. And if my intuitions are right, and you know they usually are, Willow is with you. I know you must be feeling guilty about falling in love again. I know your heart, love. I know how you carry the weight of loyalty like a cross, but I want you to know you have my blessing. In fact, you always have. Willow isn't just the person I chose to carry our baby. She is the person I chose to help you live again. Because living, my love, is much more than surviving. Take care of her. Take care of our daughter. And most importantly, allow yourself to be happy again. With all my eternal love. Vivian. When they finished reading, they both had tears in their eyes. Archer pulled Willow closer, his hands naturally finding the place on her belly where his daughter gently moved. She always knew, didn't she? Willow muttered. Even before us. Vivian had a gift for seeing beyond appearances, Archer replied, his voice hoarse with emotion, to see possibilities that others didn't see. You still love her, Willow confirmed, no accusation in her voice. I will always love you, he confirmed, turning to face her. But I discovered that the heart has an infinite capacity for love. Loving you doesn't take away from what I felt for her. In fact, it makes her legacy even more meaningful. That night, when they finally left the gallery, something had changed between them. It was as if the last barrier had been removed, allowing their hearts to finally open completely to each other. The future still held challenges. Rachel's recovery, the last months of pregnancy, the adjustments of their very different lives intertwining. But now they were sure that they would not face anything alone. And somewhere, Vivian was smiling, pleased to see her latest plan unfolding exactly as she had imagined. One October morning, Willow adjusted her navy blue dress in the mirror of Archer's new apartment. In the last few weeks, since Rachel's successful surgery, she had been spending more and more time there, her sheet music and music books gradually finding space among the minimalist objects in the penthouse. Are you sure you want to do this? Archer asked, adjusting his tie as he watched her reflection. The council can wait. Today would be their first official appearance as a couple at a Kingston Technologies event, a benefit lunch organized by the company to raise funds for public school music programs. The idea had been Willow's, inspired by her own experience as a teacher in the Bronx. We need to face this at some point, she replied, turning to help him with his tie. Besides, it's for a good cause. The event would be held at the Metropolitan Club, a historic building on Fifth Avenue. As the driver navigated Manhattan traffic, Willow felt the familiar anxiety rise in her chest. At 7 months pregnant, her belly was impossible to hide, and she knew she would be the center of attention and comments. Everyone's speculating, Archer commented, as if reading their thoughts. Caroline told me the theories range from a secret affair to an elaborate marketing strategy. And which one is your favorite? Willow tried to joke, but her voice shook slightly. My favorite is the truth, he replied, lacing his fingers with hers. That my late wife, in her last act of love, not only gave me a daughter, but also a second chance at happiness. When they arrived at the club, they were greeted by Caroline, who immediately assumed her role as a protective shield. The council members are eager to meet you, Willow, she informed them as she led them through the ornate lobby, especially after they found out about the music program. The main hall was decorated with understated elegance, round tables arranged around a small stage where a string quartet played softly. Willow recognized some of her students among the young musicians, part of her initiative to raise awareness of Bronx talent. Archer! A familiar voice called, and they turned to find Richard Montgomery, the oldest member of the council, approaching with his wife. And this must be the famous Miss Palmer. Mrs. Montgomery, Willow politely greeted the councillor's wife, an elegant woman who studied her with barely concealed curiosity. "So it's true," the woman commented, her eyes fixed on Willow's stomach. "Did Vivian really plan all of this?" "Margaret," Richard warned softly, but Archer had already stepped forward, his stance protective. "Yes, it's true," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "And we are so grateful for her last gift." Before the situation could become more tense, the first strains of Claire de Lune filled the room. On stage, Sophia, the young violinist at the recital, began her performance. Willow felt tears in her eyes as she watched her student shine in the spotlight. "Amazing," Margaret Montgomery murmured, genuinely impressed. "And you say she's from the Bronx?" "Talent doesn't choose zip codes, Mrs. Montgomery," Willow replied softly. "It just needs a chance to blossom." Sophia's performance was followed by other young musicians, each demonstrating the potential that the program had revealed. When it was time for speeches, Archer surprised everyone by calling Willow on stage. "Many of you may be wondering about our history," he began, his hand finding hers. "The truth is that it began with love, Vivian's love of music, of life, and her desire to leave a positive legacy on the world." Willow watched the faces of those present as Archer told his story, not the sensationalized version that circulated through corporate halls, but the truth about loss, hope, and new beginnings. When he announced that Kingston Technologies was doubling its contribution to the music program, the applause was genuine. "You looked magnificent," he whispered later as they danced softly to the quartet. "Vivian would be proud." "Both of us," Willow added, resting her head on his shoulder, "for honoring his memory in the best way possible, by living fully." The baby moved between them, as if wanting to participate in the moment. Archer smiled, his hand finding the familiar spot on Willow's stomach. "I think she approves too," he murmured. When they left the Metropolitan Club hours later, the autumn sun was painting Manhattan in golden hues. In the car, Willow leaned against Archer, exhausted but satisfied. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For making me feel like I belong in your world, even when everything seems so different from mine." Archer turned to face her, his eyes serious. "You don't belong in my world, Willow. You're creating a new world with me, one that combines music and business, dreams and reality." The driver took them not to the penthouse, but to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, Vivian's special place. The sun was setting when they reached the Rose Garden where, years before, she and Archer had dreamed of their family. "She'd like to know I still come here," Archer commented, guiding Willow through the flowers. "Especially now with you." Somewhere nearby, a lone violin played, its notes floating in the evening air like a musical blessing for the couple who, among roses and memories, were forging their own path to happiness. The Kingston Gallery office remained bright well after business hours. Archer had transformed Vivian's old space into a sanctuary of memories and new beginnings, where he often retreated to work on special projects. On this particular night, he and Willow were poring over architectural plans spread across the conference table. "A music conservatory in the Bronx?" Caroline asked, adjusting her glasses as she looked over the documents. "It's an ambitious project." "It's more than that," Willow explained, her face cheerful despite the obvious tiredness of her 8th month of pregnancy. "It will be a complete cultural center, offering not only music classes, but also art therapy programs, community performances." "And rotating exhibitions from the Kingston Gallery," Archer added, his hand naturally finding the small of Willow's back. Vivian always wanted to expand the reach of art beyond Soho. The project was born during one of Willow's visits to the school where she still taught. Watching her students cram into a makeshift room for music lessons, she shared with Archer her vision for a space that could truly nurture emerging talent. "The costs of renovating the old theatre are considerable," Caroline commented, leafing through the preliminary budget. "The council may question—" "The council already approved it," Archer interrupted with a small smile. After the success of the benefit, it was hard to argue with the value of art in the community. A sudden movement, made Willow press her hand against her prominent belly. Archer was immediately at his side, concern evident on his face. "It's okay," she assured, guiding his hand to feel the baby's movements. "She's just especially excited today. I think she inherited her father's entrepreneurial spirit." "And mother's artistic hearts," he murmured, kissing her temple softly. Caroline watched the interaction with a knowing smile. Over the past few weeks, he had witnessed his friend's gradual transformation, the return of the light in his eyes, the softening of their once sharp edges. "Vivienne would have loved that," she commented, collecting her papers. "Not just the conservatory, but seeing the two of you together, building something meaningful." After Caroline left, Willow walked to the window that looked out onto the bustling streets of Soho. The city lights twinkled like urban stars, reflecting in the gallery's glass. "What are you thinking about?" Archer asked, hugging her from behind. "How unpredictable life is," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "A year ago, I was giving private piano lessons to pay Rachel's bills. Now, I'm here, helping plan a music conservatory, carrying a child I already love more than anything, and being loved by someone who never imagined finding happiness again," he added, his voice hoarse with emotion. The moment was interrupted by the ringing of Willow's cell phone, Rachel sending photos of her last cardiac appointment. The results were promising, his recovery progressing better than expected. "She wants to come to New York next month," Willow commented, showing Archer the messages. "To be here when the baby is born. We can prepare the penthouse guest room," he suggested. "That way, she's close by to help in the first few days." The ease with which Archer included Willow's family in his plans still surprised her sometimes. It was a constant reminder of how he had changed since that first night she had shown up on his doorstep. "I found another letter from Vivienne today," he said softly, removing an envelope from his briefcase. It was kept in the secret drawer of the desk, with instructions to be opened when the conservatory began to take shape. Together they sat on the leather sofa that still held a faint trace of Vivienne's perfume. The letter, like all the others, was written in his elegant handwriting. "Dear Archer and Willow, if you are reading this letter, it means that my dream of uniting your souls through music is coming true in ways I may not have even imagined. The conservatory was a project I've held close to my heart for years, but never found the right time to share. Now, I see that the universe had its own plans. I needed both of you, the business visionary and the passionate teacher, to bring this dream to life. Our daughter will be born into a world where art and music are bridges between different realities, exactly as they were bridges between you. Keep building, dreaming, loving. And always remember, the best symphonies are those composed of different instruments, each bringing its own melody to create something greater than the sum of its parts. With eternal love, Vivienne." When they finished reading, they both remained silent, letting Vivienne's words echo in their hearts. Outside, the city continued its nightly dance, but inside the gallery, time seemed suspended in a moment of perfect harmony. "She was right," Willow finally said, her voice soft, "about music being a bridge." "About everything," Archer agreed, putting the letter away carefully. "Including us." Winter arrived in Manhattan with an unexpected blizzard, transforming the city into a postcard setting. At Archer's penthouse, Rachel was recovering well, occupying the guest bedroom while helping with final preparations for the baby's arrival. On this particular morning, Willow woke up with a strange feeling. At 8.5 months pregnant, each new day brought a mixture of anxiety and expectation. He found Rachel and Archer in the kitchen, both engrossed in a discussion about the breakfast menu. "Pancakes are too heavy," Rachel argued, her face flushed with health, a sight that still thrilled Willow after months of seeing her so frail. "Will needs something lighter." "Actually," Willow interrupted, leaning against the doorframe, "I think we need to go to the hospital." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Archer's coffee cup shattering on the floor. "But there's still 2 weeks to go," he managed to say, already on the move. Apparently your daughter inherited your impatience for important meetings, Willow tried to joke, but a contraction made her squint. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Caroline was contacted, the medical team alerted, and the hospital bag, prepared weeks ago, was recovered from the closet. On the way to the hospital, as Rachel held her hand in the back seat of the SUV, Willow watched Archer in the rearview mirror, noticing how his fingers tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Hey," she called softly. "Everything will be fine." He met your eyes in the mirror, a tight smile on his lips. "I should be telling you that." At Mount Sinai Hospital, Dr. Richardson was already waiting for them. The contractions were regular, but the labor promised to be long. While being settled in the private room, Willow noticed a small music box on the side table, identical to the one that held Vivian's letters. "I found it this morning," Archer explained, "sitting next to you on the bed. It was instructed to only be opened when labor began." Rachel discreetly left the room, giving them privacy. With shaking hands, Willow opened the box, letting the familiar melody of Clair de Lune fill the room. Inside, in addition to another letter, there was a delicate gold bracelet with a pendant in the shape of a musical note. "My loves," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means our little one is about to see the world. Archer, darling, I know you're terrified. You've always hated situations you couldn't control. Willow, breathe. You are stronger than you know. This bracelet belonged to my grandmother, who passed it on to my mother, who gave it to me on my wedding day. Now, I want it to be our daughter's, a symbol of the love that transcends time and the circumstances that brought us together. Remember, the best concerts are those where every note, even the unexpected ones, contributes to the beauty of the final melody. With eternal love, Vivian." A particularly strong contraction interrupted the reading, causing Willow to squeeze Archer's hand. The hours dragged by, marked by the comings and goings of the medical team, quick visits from Caroline and Rachel, and moments of intimacy where only the music from the box broke the silence. "Tell me about her," Willow asked during a lull. "About Vivian when she was pregnant for the first time." Archer seemed surprised by the request, but his eyes softened at the memory. "She was radiant," he began, adjusting the pillow behind Willow. "I planned every detail. I transformed one of the penthouse bedrooms into a music studio for the baby. The same room that will now be the nursery," Willow added, smiling despite her discomfort. "Yes. When we lost that pregnancy, she spent days playing the piano. She said music was her way of processing her grief." Willow held his hand tighter. "She gave us so much, Archer. Not just this child, but the chance to create something new out of pain." "You gave me that too," he replied, leaning down to kiss your sweaty forehead. "The courage to believe in new beginnings." Dawn advanced slowly. Rachel took turns with Archer, telling her childhood stories to distract her sister. Caroline dropped by occasionally with coffee and updates on the conservatory, work on which had begun the week before. Finally, as the first rays of sunlight began to paint the Manhattan sky, Dr. Richardson announced that it was time. Archer, still holding Willow's hand, looked simultaneously terrified and amazed. "Remember to breathe," the doctor instructed. "Both of you," he added with a smile, noticing how Archer looked paler than the patient. The next few minutes were intense, filled with encouragement from the medical team and the sound of the music box, which Rachel had thoughtfully reactivated. And then, precisely at 6:47 a.m., a baby's loud cry cut through the air, blending perfectly with the last notes of Clair de Lune. "She's a beautiful, healthy girl," Dr. Richardson announced, placing the little bundle in Willow's arms. "Melody," Archer whispered, gently touching his daughter's little hand. "Melody Vivian Kingston." The routine at the Kingston penthouse settled into a rhythm of its own in the weeks following Melody's birth. The nights were filled with improvised lullabies on the piano, while the day brought a delicate dance of shared responsibilities between Archer, Willow, and Rachel, who decided to extend her stay in New York. On a particularly busy morning, Archer found Willow in the music room, once Vivian's sanctuary, now transformed into a space that blended nursery and studio. She rocked Melody while gently playing the piano with one hand, the baby snuggled perfectly in her other arm. "You make it look so natural," he commented, leaning against the doorframe. "Years of multitasking practice with my students," she smiled, but her eyes revealed the tiredness of sleepless nights. "How was the meeting about the conservatory?" "Construction is well underway," Archer replied, walking over to pick up Melody, who immediately grabbed his tie with tiny fingers. "Caroline was able to expedite city permits. We can open ahead of schedule." The conservatory project had become an anchor for both of them, a shared purpose that went beyond their personal relationship or even Melody's. It was a way to honor not only Vivian's memory, but also to create something meaningful for the future. "I got an interesting call today," Willow commented, adjusting the shawl covering Melody. "Sophia, my violin student, was accepted into Juilliard's Young Talent program." "The first of many successes to come from the conservatory," Archer smiled, gently rocking Melody, who was beginning to fall asleep. "Vivian always said that talent is like a seed. You just need the right soil to blossom." Rachel entered the room silently, carrying a tray of tea. Over the past few weeks, she had become an indispensable presence, filling the gaps between Archer's responsibilities and Willow's recoveries with calm efficiency. "Vivian's letters to Melody begin today," she reminded him gently, placing the tray on the piano. "She left specific instructions for the first week." Archer nodded, remembering the carefully organized set of envelopes they found in the gallery office, each marked with a specific date containing messages for different moments in Melody's life. With Melody safely asleep in her crib, the three gathered on the music room couch. Today's envelope was marked simply, "First Week, to be read as a family." "My little Melody," Willow began to read, her soft voice echoing in the room. "If this name was chosen for you, as I imagine it was, know that it carries not only music, but also history. It is a name that unites past and present, old and new love, in perfect harmony." Archer held Willow's hand as she continued, "You were born of a love that transcends the ordinary, not just the love between your biological parents, but also the courageous love of a woman who chose to carry you, and the renewed love that I'm sure blossomed between her and your father." Rachel discreetly wiped away a tear as the letter continued. "Your family is unique, my love. It is rooted in music, in art, in perseverance. It has the entrepreneurial heart of your father, the artistic sensibility of your mother's. Yes, you have two, and what a blessing that is. And the resilient spirit of your Aunt Rachel." "How did she know?" Rachel whispered, surprised to see herself mentioned. "Vivian had a gift for seeing beyond the present," Archer replied softly, "to see connections before they even form." The letter continued, detailing hopes and dreams for Melody's future, ending on a note that made everyone smile through their tears. "And remember, my little song, that the best symphonies are those that incorporate different instruments, different rhythms, different stories. Your life will be a unique masterpiece, composed by all the people who love you." That night, after Rachel retired and Melody finally fell asleep, Archer found Willow on the porch, gazing at the lights of Manhattan. Wordlessly, he wrapped her in his arms, letting the silence of the night rock them. "Sometimes I wonder," she murmured against his chest, "if we're doing everything right. If this is how Vivian imagined it." "I think we're doing better," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "We are creating our own music, our own story, while honoring hers." The soft sound of the baby monitor brought little sighs from Melody, like dropped notes from a song yet to be written. On the horizon, the first lights of dawn began to paint the Manhattan sky, promising a new day of discoveries and challenges. "The conservatory is going to need an artistic director," Archer commented casually, though his eyes revealed the importance of the suggestion. "Someone who understands both music and the social value of the project." Willow turned in his arms, studying his face. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Kingston?" "I'm offering a partnership," he corrected softly. "In every way." The deeper meaning of those words hovered between them, full of promises not yet spoken. In the next room, Melody let out a small, satisfied sigh, as if approving of her parents' conversation. The life they were building together was like a complex piece of music, with moments of perfect harmony, occasional dissonance, and always the promise of a new melody on the horizon. And somewhere, Vivian smiled, pleased to see her latest gift unfolding into more beautiful forms than she could have ever imagined. A year after Melody was born, the Kingston Gallery was lit up for a special event. The Music Conservatory in the Bronx was opening the following week, and Archer had organized a private exhibition combining visual art and musical performances, a celebration of the unity between the worlds that Vivian loved so much. Willow adjusted the sapphire blue dress that Caroline had helped her choose, while she watched Melody play with her musical bracelet on Rachel's lap. The little girl was a perfect mix of her parents, Archer's piercing blue eyes, with the bright smile that everyone said was identical to Vivian's. "Are you nervous?" Archer asked, entering the office they now shared at the gallery. His gaze softened at the sight of his two women, as he affectionately referred to Willow and Melody. "A little," Willow admitted, checking the sheet music one last time. "It's the first time I've played in public since that recital," he added, moving closer to adjust the pearl choker around her neck, a birthday present that had belonged to Vivian. "But this time is different. This time, we are celebrating not just the past, but also the future." The gallery had been transformed for the occasion. Among the carefully selected works of art, small stages were set up for intimate performances. Sophia, now a promising Juilliard student, would be one of the headliners, along with other talents discovered through the conservatory's program. "I found this morning," Rachel commented, handing Willow a familiar envelope. "It was scheduled for today specifically." The paper smelled faintly of Vivian's perfume, as if it had been sealed only moments before. Together they sat on the sofa in the office, the same one where so many letters had been read over the last year. "My beloved family," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means that the conservatory is about to open its doors, and with it, a new chapter in your lives. Archer, my love, you have finally learned that success is not just measured in numbers and contracts. Willow, darling, you have shown that true love has many forms, all equally valuable." Melody, as if sensing the importance of the moment, lay extraordinarily still on Rachel's lap, her little fingers playing with the musical pendant on her bracelet. "To our little Melody," the letter continued, "who must now be beginning to explore the world, with the curiosity I always dreamed of for my children. You are living proof that love transcends time and circumstances. You carry within you not just genes, but stories, dreams, and infinite possibilities." Archer held Willow's hand tightly as she continued reading. "Rachel, your presence in this family was no accident. Your resilient heart and dedication to others are precious gifts that enrich the lives of everyone around you. And to all of you, together, the conservatory is not just a building or a program. It is a testament to the transformative power of music and love. It is the place where different melodies meet to create something greater than the sum of its parts." The sound of guests arriving filtered through the office door. Caroline poked her head inside, signaling that it was time. Willow carefully folded the letter, placing it with all the others in the music box that now occupied a special place on the bookshelf. The night passed like a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Sophia moved everyone with her interpretation of Tchaikovsky, while other young talents from the Bronx showed the potential that the conservatory would help develop. The most touching moment, however, came when Willow sat down at the grand piano. Archer, with Melody in his arms, watched as she began to play an original composition, a piece she had written over the past year, interweaving themes from Claire de Lune with her own melodies that told her story of love, loss, and rebirth. When the last notes dissipated into the air, there wasn't a dry eye in the gallery. Archer approached the piano, Melody reaching out to Willow as applause filled the space. "That was extraordinary," he whispered, helping her to her feet. "It was our story," she replied softly. "All our stories." Later, when the last guests had left and Melody was sleeping peacefully in Rachel's arms, Archer took Willow to the gallery terrace. The Manhattan night glowed around them, a million lights dancing like earthly stars. "I have something for you," he said, taking a small box out of his pocket. "Actually, I've been thinking about it for months, but I wanted to wait for the right moment." The ring was a work of art in itself, a delicate intertwining of white and yellow gold, with a pearl surrounded by small diamonds shaped like musical notes. "It's not a traditional engagement ring," he explained, noticing the tears in her eyes, "because our story isn't traditional either. It's a promise to keep writing our music together, to honor the past as we build our future." "It's perfect," Willow whispered, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "Like everything that got us here." On the horizon, the sky began to lighten with the first lights of dawn. Somewhere, Vivian's spirit smiled, pleased to see her latest gift unfolding in forms more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. The music would continue in an eternal symphony of love, loss, and new beginnings, each note contributing to the unique melody that was their shared story. And so, amid the lights of Manhattan and the promises of dawn, Archer and Willow sealed their commitment with a kiss. Not a happy ending, but the beginning of a new movement in their perpetual symphony of love.